Let's move on now to this week's budget. We've learned a little bit more about which areas will get a spending boost. And I think Bobby's going to welcome this news because Rachel Reeves confirmed yesterday that Labour will spend £1.4 billion to rebuild crumbling schools and triple the budget for free breakfast clubs for pupils to £30 million. An extra £15 million will also be allocated so that more primary schools can offer nurseries as part of the free childcare scheme. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer said that children should not suffer the mess that Labour had inherited from 14 years of Tory failure. Now, some people will wonder where all this money is coming from, but maybe that's not your key concern. You're just concerned about schools and whether they need a big injection of cash.
Absolutely. And again, across the political divide, when people have come into power, they've often talked about the value of education. Tony Blair partly won on the mantra of education, education, education back in 97. And even when Rishi Sunak became leader, one of the first things he said was that education is the silver bullet to solving our country's woes. So I think in terms of our future, if we're thinking of Britain as a 21st century power, we make a statement to the world, it's our young people that will make that impact. So obviously, I understand we're in economically tough situations. I worked in the city in my 20s. I know that money does talk, but it'll be short-sighted for us not to invest in our children, because investing in our children now, whether it's, again, through making sure that our teachers are properly paid, our buildings are repaired, the sector's more funded, special needs children are looked after.
But it'll be the children who'll be paying for it because of all the debt.
Yeah, but again...
That is the issue. They will be paying for it for generations.
I agree, but it's an investment that's worth it. Sometimes you spend now, so that later on we get young people that are better qualified, yes, less mental health issues, less likely to go into crime. So actually, it costs money now, but it means in the future we'll probably, I think, will save money.
I mean, Andrea, we've heard an enormous amount from this government about the inheritance.
Yes.
The inheritance from 14 years of Tory misrule, Tory negligence, Tory any word really that you care to insert there. Do you accept it, particularly in the case of children's education, particularly, I mean, with the thing that we talked about first, which is crumbling schools, because you cannot focus on your algebra and your reading if there are bits of window falling off and you're in a porter cabin. People will say that, that's absolutely appalling that it's reached that state of
I mean,
affairs.
look, let's look at the facts. So remember, Labour left that note, Liam Byrne, saying there's no money left. Give me any Labour government that has ever left the finances in a better place than when they received them after a Conservative government. And let's not forget, look, we had to deal with Brexit. We had to deal with the financial crash that was caused by Labour. We had to...
Caused by Labour?
Look, come on. He sold our gold as well for low amounts.
That's a global financial crisis.
Yeah, well,
if they're going to say...
financial crisis, yes, but they didn't leave our finances in a good state. So back to the question, Vanessa.
I mean, we do remember that there's nothing here, empty exchequer. That is
right,
fair,
if I can just finish what I was saying.
To some extent, anyway.
Then we had COVID. We had to put in injections and borrow lots of money to save people's jobs. And then we had the energy crisis globally. So we've had a lot to deal with. And so, but what I think, rather than giving these train drivers these massive pay increases, put the money into schools. Rather than putting these billions on net zero on the global stage, put the money into schools. I agree. Education is one of the most important departments because it affects everything. It affects the economy, it affects healthcare outcomes, but we cannot keep borrowing money to do this.
And Bobby, as far as you're concerned, these targets, breakfast clubs, crumbling schools, are those the right places for the money? Or if you were in charge of this as a teacher who knows exactly what you're doing, where would you put the money? Where do you think the most obvious gaps are in educational funding?
So I think actually the breakfast clubs, they are a relatively cheap way of making sure young people contribute better in school, because as a teacher, sometimes, sadly, there are children...
I think we should push back on parents, though, because I think we should.
We should do, as part of, both can be, you could do both approaches at the same time.
When you say push back on parents, what do you mean?
Well, they should be feeding the children, shouldn't they, before they go to school? That's a responsible parental responsibility. And I would rather see the money go on to special educational needs. This is where we've really got a problem in the country with the waiting list for children being assessed for special educational needs and getting the support in school. So I think rather than breakfast clubs, put the money into that.
OK, after the break, we're diving deeper into the budget and we're asking you if you think Labour will make you better off. Keir Starmer says you will have more money in your pocket, but it will be in 5 years' time as a result of this week's measures. Can you wait that long? And do you believe him? 0207 862 2222. That's the number you need. Look forward to hearing from you and see you after the break. First first of all, do you think Labour will make you better off? 0207 862 2222, that's the number. In a speech today, the Prime Minister will warn that Labour's first budget in 14 years reflects the harsh reality of Britain's finances. It's all here in the Mirror today. Writing in the Mirror, Keir Starmer insisted the measures on Wednesday will deliver change people will feel and that Brits will have more money in their pockets in 5 years' time. Labour say they won't raise taxes on working people, with Rachel Reeves claiming that employees won't lose out in their payslip the day after the budget. But it is expected that a freeze in tax rate thresholds will be extended, meaning that by the end of the decade, 600,000 workers will pay more. And small business owners, landlords and people with shares and large savings are braced for higher taxes. That's after suggestions from the Prime Minister and his cabinet that they may not count as working people. Andrea, I'm asking people, aren't I, to phone in and say, do you think you will feel better off after the budget? Do you expect that the phones are going to light up with people saying yes?
I don't think people will. I'd be surprised. I just cannot think of a period in history where people have been better off after a Labour government, actually. And I just think that they are attacking aspiration. We've seen what they're doing with the winter fuel allowance, those who do the right things in life. We've seen what they're doing with private schools, what they're saying now about people are not classed as workers if they've got assets. So I think they're punishing aspiration.
And we're going to bring Bobby in just one second, but Labour do seem to be struggling to confirm who is a working person and would therefore be shielded from tax rises and who is not a working person. This has sparked a huge round. Of course, it's not as simple as are you working or aren't you working? It seems much more complicated than that. So this is Keir Starmer being quizzed by Beth Rigsby.
So for someone who works but gets their income from assets as well, such as shares of property, are they a working person?
Well, they wouldn't come within my definition.
So their taxes could go up?
Yeah, you can probably give me any number of examples. No, you're tagging a second question to the first, which is you're asking me for a definition of who's a working person, and then you're making assumptions about what the tax might be in relation to.
The point is, we're running out of time, but I could go through fuel duty if you're driving a van.
You could.
You're a working person and you might put fuel duty up.
You could go through that exercise. Or you could, ensure that people hear from me who I have in my mind's eye.
Well, Downing Street did later claim that people who hold a small amount of savings in stocks and shares still do count as working people. And yesterday, Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson was grilled by the BBC's Laura Kunsberg about the fate of small business owners.
Is a small business owner whose average net profit last year might have been £13,000, that's the average, are they not a working person?
Look, we can go through a range of different hypotheticals about who may or may not be captured by tax measures that may or may not happen in the budget.
You'll
be able to ask, when Rachel sat here next weekend, you can ask her about the precise measures that she has announced. When people are after the budget, when they look at their payslip that they receive, what they will see is a Labour government that has prioritised making sure they do not see higher taxes, because we know for 14 years we've been going in the wrong direction.
And of course, we do want to hear from you on this one. Do you think you'll be better off after this budget, or do you fear this budget? And do you class yourself as a working person? Would Keir Starmer agree with you? Bobby, this is you might say, the Labour government getting itself into a right pickle over defining something that most people would say was completely obvious. They had that whole problem with explaining who is a woman and who is not, that most people would think was blindingly obvious. What constitutes a working person? What do you think the answer to that question is?
So I think listening to what they've said, essentially working person is someone at the end of the month has a pay slip that they pick up, that they've been paid, perhaps pension contributions. So someone that's the majority of their income is through someone else paying them. So they're working essentially for someone else, but it could be for themselves, but working and picking up monthly paychecks. But it's all about the bigger picture. I think the context of where we are. We've had 14 years where we've picked up nationally an abject state of both our public finances and our public services. And you think about our hospitals, the length of waiting times for an appointment. Our schools, we discussed about crumbling schools and teachers underfunded and mental health care services there. And our transport is unreliable. So I think we're in a really dire economic situation. Our public services are massively...
You could have put our water supply in there as well, something as basic and integral to our survival as our water supply.
Well, maybe you should be a politician, because he described the first bit of a working person better than the ministers did.
All right, let's go to the phone line. So glad so many calls pouring in this morning. Let's talk to Karen in Dorset about this. Morning, Karen. Thanks for ringing. Hi. Hi, Karen.
Yes,
hello, you're there on the line, and I can hear you there, Karen.
I can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me? That's a shame.
Yes, I've got you now.
Oh, you got me now.
Sorry,
brilliant. All right.
Signal.
Good morning. Yeah. Are you looking forward to the budget? How do you feel about it?
I'm terrified. Terrified.
What are you terrified of? What's worrying you?
Well, Labour haven't got one member in that cabinet that run a small business. They're clueless with small businesses, and we've got a family business that's been going for 40 years, and we are absolutely terrified about this budget.
So tell me, what is the business? What do you do, Karen? What is the business?
It supplies materials to sign makers. It's a wholesaler. It employs about 70 people, and this budget could put us over the edge.
And just to explain what they'd have to do that to you. What is it that you're scared of?
Well, there's a range of things. There's the abolishing of BPR, which, if that happens... Sorry, I can't hear you.
No, I can hear you, though. You sound fine. If they abolish that, what would happen to your business?
Well, our father's 90 years old, so basically, if anything happened to him, Sorry, are you speaking? I can't hear.
Karen, I think we'll terminate, because it seems to be very hard for us to hear each other. Let's talk to Natalie on the line in Buckinghamshire. Hi, Natalie.
Okay, all right.
Hi, Natalie.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
Tell me about you and how you feel about this upcoming budget. How are you feeling?
I'm terrified. Like the last call, I'm actually worried. It's putting a lot of pressure on me and my husband. We both work full time. We both get a paycheck at the end of the month. Yeah. And we're worried. And the thing is, that's great if he says, oh, we'll be better off in 5 years, but we need to be better off now.
And are you one of the people, Natalie, who falls into the category of having some savings, a little bit of money put away?
Right, so when COVID hit, we had to use our savings to keep us afloat. Right. And since then, we've not been able to save because everything's just so expensive now. So if anything happened, we'd be under the water, we'd be drowning.
Right, Andrea, I mean, there's genuine worry.
Oh, completely. I mean, I'm still getting emails. My email inbox is open to the 4th of November of people seriously worried. Mm-hmm. I think it's because, you know, those sort of my age remember what a Labour government can do. And the Conservatives, remember, we did lift a lot of people out of paying tax, didn't we? We raised the threshold. So I'm worried as well.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And Bobby, does this sound to you like austerity? It's all very familiar. What's happening?
Again, I think it's when Keir Starmer stood and said, vote for me, vote for his party, he said judges not just on the first few months, first year, it's the first term. And he's always talked about it being a 10-year project. Because, again, this country has to turn the ship round. You can't just quickly
You can't,
navigate.
But Natalie, 10 years is too long for you. Even 5 years is too long for you, right?
It's way too long. I mean, gas and electricities are high, water's about to go up. Food costs. I mean, I've got 3 children. I've got to keep a roof over their head, clothes on their back, food in their bellies. I work full time. I can't do any more. And it's just, I'm really worried about what this budget is going to do for me and my family.
All right. Thank you so much for calling. Let's talk to Lynn in Suffolk. Hello, Lynn. Are you concerned?
Hello, Vanessa.
Hello.
I'm just so disappointed. Because I did hope that I'm now nearly 80. We have little savings. We own our house, but we only paid the mortgage off eventually in our 70s recently. But I've had an inspirational idea. I want to share it with everybody listening, and I hope you find it a good idea too. Yeah. Probably someone will shoot me down in flames. But when people have a little bit of extra money and they have hope in their hearts and they actually go out and put some money on a horse, They buy a lottery ticket. Yeah. They buy scratch tickets, things of this nature. We are a nation who does bet, I hope sensibly.
Yes.
A lot of people don't. Yes. And my idea was that the government, with National Lottery Euro Millions too, if you win, you pay 10% of your winnings to the government plus 20% on top of the 10% that you're handing to the government. Everyone will be thrilled. Everyone who wins, they're thrilled anyway. They'll put it in their pocket and think, that's not bad. And the money would then make them feel better. Some money would go to the government. That could generate a great deal.
I think that idea is a good idea, Lynn, but also might be seriously being considered by Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves. So watch this space. Thank you so much, Lynn, for ringing. After the break, we're taking more of your calls on whether Labour will make you better off. Do you trust the government when it comes to taxes? Do let us know on 0207. Do you think Labour will make you better off? Keir Starmer does. Ahead of the budget, he said people will have more money in their pockets in 5 years' time. The number's 0207 862 2222. And we'll start off with a message from Paul on X. And he says, yes, Labour will make us better off in the long term, not like the Tories and their sticky plaster politics, which only makes everyone, apart from the rich, poorer in the long term. Let's go straight to Angela, who's on the line in Cardiff. Hi, Angela. Morning.
Good morning.
Hi. How are you feeling about the budget that's upcoming?
Well, to be honest, my husband and I are not rich. I'm a retired nurse. I was tempted to ring in later, actually, but I'm ringing in on this one. And my husband's a retired civil servant. We're not wealthy. However, we do not expect to be better off. We're probably going to be marginally worse off. But I feel that we all need to be honest with ourselves, and having been through what the country has been through for the last 5+ years, we have to expect to suffer a little bit of pain for longer term gain. And quite honestly, your Tory panellist, I'm appalled really at what we've been through in relation to COVID, the corruption and everything else. To be criticising this, I find it hypocritical. I'm sorry. I'm appalled. So we don't expect to be better off. As I said, we might be marginally worse off. But hey, we didn't mind the loss of the winter fuel payment. We genuinely don't need it. Yeah. And I just feel people need to be honest with themselves about the situation they're in.
All right, Andrew. So have you been honest with yourself? And this is a caller who's a nurse. She's worked very hard for all of us.
Clearly, Angela's a Labour supporter anyway. The Tory on the panel, you can tell with the rhetoric with that, and also
it's not really rhetoric. You are a Tory. Why is that rhetoric?
No, but the fact that the way you're criticising the Conservative government, clearly you're. The winter fuel allowance. I mean, so many people wrote to me who's fearing losing it. You clearly don't need it, but a lot of people do.
But the idea, though, that you are defending the legacy of the Tory government, now we're facing this budget and
I'm defending the legacy because look what we had to deal with. As I said, Brexit. Look at what we inherited back in 2010 as a coalition government. The finances was in a dire state. Then, as I said, we've had COVID, we've had Brexit, we've also had the global energy crisis and the war in Ukraine. We haven't been dealt with a necessarily normal hand, so it's not going to be at its best state.
Angela, I hope, is still on the line in Cardiff. Angela, do respond, please.
Well, as far as COVID is concerned, the Tory government were warned about this by all the experts, and they made no preparation for it. They knew it was coming, and Theresa May shelved the Cygnus report in readiness for the pandemic. And the upshot of that was we lost tens and hundreds of thousands of lives. There was corruption over the PPE.
Can I ask, are you a Labour voter? Because I did ask that question.
No, I'm not.
Oh, really?
No, I'm not.
Oh, Lib Dem then?
No, I'm not. Well, that's my business, really.
Yeah,
but
I'm not sure why that matters.
No.
Why does that matter?
Well, because, look, you go from your own viewpoint. Obviously, I'm a Conservative. I defend Conservative values. You're defending something else. So to me, that matters. You do.
But I'm not sure that's at all true. I don't think you go from a political standpoint.
No,
Angela,
right.
I hope, is responding as a human being, as a caller, watching the television and things. I don't think it's about an ideology.
Absolutely.
It's about how do you actually feel about things and how has your life panned out.
You're absolutely right, Vanessa.
Yeah, good.
You're absolutely right, Vanessa.
That's nice to be right for a change. Thanks, Angela. Let's just bring Bobby in on
and
this.
one thing I like to Angela said is about people having to accept that there will be short-term pain. Because after 14 years, again, I understand there were, we had COVID, we had the Ukraine crisis, energy prices going up, but the government, Conservative government, still had 14 years. Whatever happened in 2009-10, there's no money left in the till. You had 14 years to turn, not you personally, but the government had 14 years to turn things around. And if they haven't, they have to accept responsibility for that. And now this Labour government, we have to give them a chance. They're going to try and turn things around, but they said they can't do it immediately.
But I was one of the biggest critics of my own party as well.
Yes,
so,
Angela, thanks so much for the call. Let's move on now to Ian in Essex. Good morning, Ian.
Good morning.
Hi. The budget looming. How do you feel about the potential?
Not good. I'm a pensioner. I'm already, as a household, we're already £400 a year worse off. Don't get me wrong, it's not a disaster for me, but there are an awful lot of people who it is a disaster for, and they know who these people are. Through the Department of Works and Pensions, they know how much, within reason, how much people are getting, and so they know who the people are who should be getting the pension credit, but some of them, can't or find it a chore. If you're in your 80s, it's a chore to fill in a 200 or 300 question questionnaire.
And on a personal
level, so they know
level,
who the people are that deserve it, so give it to them. But
sure,
but
Ian, for you in this budget, what are you thinking about? What would concern you on Wednesday?
Well, personally, it won't affect me. They've already kicked the pensioners. Once you start putting the duty on fuel up, that affects everything. Most things go by road, so that will affect inflation. The cost of everything will go up because deliveries to the shops go up. I used to part-time drive for Sainsbury's.
Right.
Well, those delivery costs are going to go up. Everything will go up. If you put the duty on petrol up, my suggestion is the private sector could no longer afford final salary pensions. Do away, not for the whole public sector, because nurses, policemen, firemen, yes, I think they deserve it, because otherwise they won't be able to recruit people. Politicians, no. But that's like getting a turkey to vote for Christmas, isn't it? Do away with their final salary pensions. They're all
right,
reasonably
Ian,
well off.
thank you. Thank
salary.
you very much indeed. We've got callers with excellent ideas on absolutely everything. Thank you so much for all your calls on this one.